Yo, where's the camera? It is. What's up, YouTube, and welcome back. We are live again. Turn the water on. Now, you may be noticing that I'm doing this from a different angle today. And by the way, I'm also doing this from my phone, so this is going to be very difficult for me not to keep looking back and forth at myself. Make sure it stays focused on me. There we go. But we're going to do what we can. Welcome back, everybody. It's been crazy. The holidays, I swear the holidays are it's like a black hole. November and December are basically the worst months of all time. I wish that none of us had to do anything for those months. And yet we do. I'm just grabbing the coffee making implements. So basically the last month and a half, I've been AWOL from this show because I was sick. And then so I'll tell you that story real quick. So I got sick in Arizona over Thanksgiving. And I blame one of I think little kids a lot of times have germs that people aren't used to if you don't have kids. And so I think I probably caught something from one of my nephews or nieces. Not that it's their fault. They weren't trying to infect me. It's just kind of what ended up happening. But I got sick, violently ill. So for the next week after Thanksgiving, I was puking my guts out essentially. And then I kind of came back and I was good for about 3 days. And then then I got sick with a head cold. And I don't know. A lot of people talk about the idea of a man cold, where it tends to affect us much worse than it should, and we're not really that out of it, and yet we kind of act like we are. And I think it hits me pretty hard usually. I usually get a cold once, sometimes twice, but usually not more than twice a year. And it's usually right before Christmas and then January, February-ish. Anyway, so it hit me pretty bad. So I was down for another 4 days. And then we had a trip planned for Sue's birthday that we had planned for, I don't know, half the year. And so we went to Lake Tahoe. We went to Mammoth Lakes first, and then we went to Lake Tahoe. And it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. But it was another week off. And then Christmas hit. The week of Christmas hit, we went to LA to hang out with Sue's brother and her brother-in-law's, with her brother and her sister-in-law's family. And then last weekend, right before New Year's, one of Sue's best friends from Scotland was in town in Las Vegas, so we went out to Vegas to hang out with them, which was a lot of fun. By the way, total random side note, is it as weird to you when people who normally wear glasses take them off? Me just taking my glasses off there, I look at myself and I'm like, there's something, you can tell there's something missing. It could just be the fact that I've got these weird wrinkles under my eyes that you don't normally see because my glasses cover them up. But anyway, so I've done a lot of soul searching and thinking over this holiday break. I don't really enjoy the holidays that much. I don't really hate them necessarily. I'm not a Grinch by any means, but by the way, I don't know if you can tell, but the aspect is flipped today. I thought it'd be fun to do the show from up close. I've been doing a lot of thinking because the holidays sort of forced me to think because I can't really work because business owners this is a kind of a double-edged sword because business owners tend to take time off around the holidays, which is good for them, and it's good for anybody starting a business because you can. The problem is those of us that don't have that large of a structure that are sort of lone wolves. November and December are pretty much the worst months of the year because nobody's responding. Everybody else is in vacation mode, and so it's kind of difficult to get new business. And this particular holiday season was rough for me, business-wise. It was a lot of fun. Personal wise, but I just saw some setbacks that I wasn't excited about, and it got me thinking about me and about offerings and about like the way that I've been going about things. Because there's this phrase that I tend to throw around with people that I talk to, and it's a biblical phrase. So some of you that are religious will get this, and some of you that won't, I'll have to explain it to you. But the phrase is kicking against the pricks, and there's a lot of different ways to interpret this. But the idea of kicking against the pricks is like you people tell you what the way you're supposed to do things, and you just fight it. You just don't like it. It's like having a horse. The pricks essentially are like a horse on a carriage, or I guess back in old Israel, they had the chariots or the wagons, and the horses would have these little things behind their legs that had little. Essentially, it was like the original version of spurs. That where if they were just supposed to keep moving forward, and if they tried to stop or back up or kick, then there were these little things back there with spikes on them that would keep them from doing so. But kicking against the pricks is like the rules have been set and it's very clear, and there are consequences for breaking the rules, and yet you break them anyway. And that's me. Like that's me to a T. And I've always kind of thought that was ironic because I love that phrase, and but anyway, it's kind of the way that I've always been. And so things like people tell you all the time, you gotta niche down. You gotta get very specific in what you do. And I have tended to kind of fight against that, mostly because I don't want to like only do one thing, because I get bored of things. Like I'm like my mind works in such a way that once I've solved a problem, I want to solve a different problem. I'm not really like a long-term, as is evidenced by the fact that I've never lasted at any job, like real traditional job that I've ever had. I'm not really like a do the same thing every day for the rest of your life kind of person, unless the thing that you're doing is variable, right? So this weekend, the thing that I've been thinking about is I am disproportionately good at solving problems, like tactical, I need this thing to talk to that thing in this way today problems. And I'm fast. And really that's, again, I've said this a million times, it's not because I'm anything smart or anything special, it's just because I've done it so many times. And I realized that if that was all that I did, in fact, I've verbalized this several times, is if I got paid to just solve people's problems, that would be ideal. Because every problem is new, every problem is unique, and in the situations where the problem is not unique, I get to kind of lean into the other part of my personality, which is I don't enjoy creating false structure. That was not the right way to say that. I don't enjoy the process of like creating like implying value, if that makes sense. Like I would rather, what I mean by that is like a lot of business owners and consultants and coaches and people will create this sort of architecture of value that's all manufactured. And I've actually said this before, where they'll talk about why they're valuable instead of just showing that they're valuable. And I think what that comes from is a false, like we have this idea that the only way that we're going to make money, which is what runs the world, the only way we're going to be able to do that is if we create value and if we hide behind the value. And my thought has always been, yes, I can create something and I can sell it to somebody else, but the only reason why it makes sense for me to make to like charge somebody for something is if I have created enough value and I'm continuing to support it somehow. But if it's a problem that I've solved for somebody already, I'm not going to I don't want to create this false expectation that I'm going to go and try and solve it again because I've already solved it. So the point that I'm making is like a lot of people would create like a library of solutions and make you pay for the solutions to the problems that they've already come up with. Whereas I would say, you can pay for my time to go solve your problem, Or if you happen to be the lucky one that comes with a problem that somebody else has already had, I'll just tell you the answer. Like, I don't understand why. And this is something that I've had very specific agree to disagree situations with close friends and colleagues, and and from a marketing perspective, it's dumb the way that I do it. And it might turn out to be that from a financial perspective, from every perspective, it's dumb that I do it that way. But I'm convinced that being true to myself from a services standpoint, and from this is how I want to do things. I think that what might be holding me back is not so much that I haven't niched down, but that I'm not being true to who I am, and that comes with both sides of that. One side is you only do the one thing, which the more I've thought about it, the more I can kind of get on board with the idea of doing less and therefore being allowed to do more. Because if I look back over the last 3 years, all of the situations I've got into where I've been extremely frustrated and where it's ended up going down in a blaze of not really glory, just sort of whatever non-glory is because I've agreed to do things that I didn't want to do in the first place, and that I shouldn't have ever agreed to. And so part of me is starting to come to realize that the fear of not having enough of that money coming in from an income perspective needs to be outweighed by the truth, which is that I need to free up my creative energy so that when problems come along, I can solve them and not have to be bogged down. I kind of bought into. I'm still trying to figure out how everything fits together, because I don't believe that one of these gurus is more right than another one. I think they're all talking about the same thing, just from a different angle. So Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about hustle and work hard. Okay, and then we got these other people over here talking about work smart. Well, I don't think that those two necessarily are disagreeing. They would think that they're disagreeing, but I think that they're just talking about two different aspects of the same thing. They're describing the elephant. One of them is describing the trunk, and one of them is describing the tusks, right? That's essentially, sorry. I realized the other day, listening back on some of the stuff that I record, that I make a lot of references based on, I can see the whole reference in my head, and I just say the reference instead of explaining the whole thing. So there's this story. Some of you may have heard the story, but there's a story about the five Chinese blind guys, or five. Anyway, they're five guys and they're blind. Indians. I don't know. Anyway, they go. They find themselves somehow. I forget the lead up to the story, the exposition, but they find themselves on an elephant. One of them's on the top, and one of them's on the trunk, and one of them's on next to the tusks, and one of them is next to the tree. The tree. That's the reference. Next to its legs, and then one of them's next to the tail. So you got one up on the top that's next to the ears, and then one on the trunk, one on the tusks, one next to the legs, and one next to the tail. And they're all blind, so they don't realize that they're all talking about the same thing. But what they say, one of them, the ones on the trunk, says, "Oh, this feels like a hose." And then the one that's on the head by the ear says, "Oh no, it's like leaves, like palm fronds. It's like a big fan." And then the one by the leg says, "No, it's like a tree, because the stumps of the legs." And the one by the tusks is "No, it's like a spear." And then the one by the tail says, "No, it's like a rope." And it's not that any one of them is more right than the other, because they're all right. They're talking about a different piece of it. But I think everybody approaches life, which I think is what everybody's trying to describe, life and how you interact with it. Everybody approaches it from their own paradigm, from their own place. And they describe what's right in front of them. And it's especially in situations like with Gary Vaynerchuk, or what's his bones, Grant Cardone, any of these other sort of Tony Robbins, any of these other people that are in the public eye. They're going to describe the successful navigation of life from the perspective of what they've done. So Gary, of course, is going to talk about hustle, because that's what he did. He hustled. Tony's going to talk about money management, because that's what he did. Right? Grant Cardone is going to talk about kicking ass and taking names, because that's what he did, right? Or whatever it is that people are talking about. They're going to do that, talk about it that way, because that's what they did. Well, my problem is because I understand that, I don't really care about any one aspect of it. I want to figure out, I want to understand that I'm not any of those guys. But I still need to figure out how life is going to work for me. Right. And so, that's again, that analogy is why I say, I don't think that any one of those gurus is necessarily right or wrong. I think they're all just describing a different aspect, different piece of the puzzle. So like I did the hustle thing, and I can do the hustle thing. I'm built for hustle. I can work 16-hour days easy. But what happens is if I'm not doing things that I enjoy doing, not doing things that I want to be doing, or not doing things that really like drive me to where I want to be, I burn out, and I burn out hard. In a blaze of glory, it's very dramatic, and it can turn out kind of ridiculous. And I'm realizing as I look back on myself, I realize that's kind of what's been happening. Because I say yes to things that I shouldn't say yes to, not because I can't, but because those things always end up with me burnt out and frustrated. And then all the little projects, little things that I do enjoy doing, I can't do them because I don't have the energy, because I've wasted it doing things that I don't want to do anyway, if that makes sense. And so anyway, all of that is to say, I'm kind of coming on board to the idea of restricting what I say yes to, for the sake of always saying yes to things that are going to give me energy and that I enjoy doing, and only saying yes to things that don't necessarily directly relate to that when it's like a dire circumstance, but still keeping it in a box where it's not like ongoing. Because I'm realizing I'm not really good at like long-term connection with something. I do much better when somebody comes to me and they say, hey, I need to solve this problem. And I come back to them 2 days later and I say, this is the solution to your problem. And then we never talk again. And if we do, it's because they have another problem, not because they want me to run all their stuff. And again, it's not because I can't run people's stuff, right? I don't have the patience to, like, the only way that it works for me to run somebody's stuff is if they say, okay, I want you to run my stuff. I'm going to give you this much money every month, and I'm not going to talk to you. And in a year, I want it to be here. And then they leave me alone. But nobody's going to do that. Nobody. Because everybody needs to know on a month-to-month basis how the numbers, they need to know reporting, they need to make sure, they need to explain it to them 100 times. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that there are people that are better at maintaining those types of relationships and making sure that they know all the individual pieces. And I've tried the explanations. I've tried teaching people my methodology. I've tried having people understand, and like, it doesn't work in most situations. Sweet, sweet glory. And so just kind of being more specific about the things that I do. Now, the cool thing is with all of this is when it comes to solving problems, I'm really, 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 really good and very fast at solving problems. So like if you are watching this and you have some sort of a tech problem, your website needs to talk to some other thing, you got this thing and you can't quite figure out how to do it, and maybe you've tried other people and they can't figure it out, I can give you about a 95% guarantee that I can figure it out. Because I know enough, and I've been around long enough, and I've solved enough problems to know how things connect together. And I think the biggest thing is that it's not just I need to make this tie to that, because the context of it is usually I need this to do this for this end. So like think about it in terms of like hiking Mount Everest. I use this analogy a lot, this sort of structure of analogy. If you're hiking Mount Everest, you're going to need a backpack, okay? And your backpack's going to need shoulder straps, okay? Well, one of the shoulder straps might break, okay? So you could go to a backpack person and you could say, hey, I need you to fix this backpack. And they could fix it, and they could use rope, or they could just like solder the straps together with just heat them up and then stick them together and let them sit that way. They could just sew it with yarn. They could sew it with thread. But if they don't understand that it needs to be put together for the purpose of hiking Mount Everest, you need to talk to somebody who's hiked Mount Everest, or at least who's hiked something similar to Mount Everest, so that they understand that there are certain types of repairs or certain types of solutions to your problem, broken strap, that don't match up with the end goal, which is hiking Mount Everest, right? So if you just say, if somebody comes to you and says, "Oh, I just or you go to them and you say, I need you to fix this backpack," and they say, "Oh, okay, well I'll just cut the strap off and I'll give you this. I'll make it a single strap. I'll just take one side to the other, and it's simpler, it's cheaper, it's better." And you might be like, "Oh, sweet! Like this is what's supposed to happen. This guy's an expert. He knows all about backpacks. He can solve this problem by switching this thing over." But that guy doesn't understand, having never hiked before in his life, that having all the weight of your backpack on one shoulder is going to break you in half when you're hiking, especially when you're hiking the largest mountain in the world, right? Whereas somebody who knows the end goal, but is also competent to solve that problem, will know that you need to either get a new strap of the same type so that it matches, or you need to replace both straps and get a belt strap to keep the support the way that it's supposed to be because you're hiking for a long time. And in some instances, this is the other thing too. You might run into somebody who is really, really good with backpacking and has done a lot of backpacking and hiking. Maybe you're not hiking Mount Everest. Maybe all you need to do is walk from your house to your office. And so they're going to go crazy and say, "Oh no, you need to spend all this money and do all this stuff to fix this problem because this is the right way to fix it." But they're only thinking that because they are a hiker. And that's how they fix their own backpacks, because they're always hiking. Well, if you're just walking from place to place, why spend all that extra money and time and effort when all you really need is for a bag that works? So it might turn out that you need to talk to somebody who knows what commuting is like, knows what the eventual requirements of commuting are, and can just say, "Oh no, you don't need to do that. In fact, this backpack is too big for commuting. Just take this bag. Take this bag. It's going to cost you less. Just put that backpack aside. Keep it in a closet somewhere because you might need it for something else later, but you don't need to use that." So the analogy is, if you don't deal, like, anybody who's worth their salt can solve problems in a vacuum. Can basically take the inputs. Okay, I need this to do this, and they can just make it happen. But the problem is those people, unless they have the experience with the end game, with the end result, they're not going to be able to create a solution that's actually viable. And by the same token, some of those same people are going to be so entrenched in doing things a certain way because of their context that they can't get past the fact that the solution might be much smaller than they think. Like, people don't realize that the best possible solution for every possible scenario is not always the best possible solution for this scenario, right? People don't realize that, like, just because the Rolls Royce is the best, I'm making this up, I don't even know if this is true, but just because Rolls Royce is the best car doesn't mean that everybody needs to own a Rolls Royce, right? Just because electric cars are the best cars, they're best for the environment, doesn't mean that everybody should have one, right? Sometimes your situation recalls for very specific outputs. And that, I think, is the difference. That's really where I've been able to shine, is because I understand enough, I speak enough of the different languages. I'm not really entrenched enough in any one of those places to be tied to it. So I'm not like tied in CEO land or tied in developer land or tied in consultant land. I'm kind of all those things. And so I can understand when somebody comes to me and says, "I have this problem, I need to solve it. Here are the parameters. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's the end result." I know to ask, okay, is this because you want to do this? Like, do you want to hike Everest? Do you want to commute to your office? Or do you just need something that looks good? Because what we do is different for each of those different situations, depending on what you actually want. Now, I can tell you what I think you should do, but I don't know enough of I never know enough of the context. So anyway, so that's kind of the difference. And I think it's going to take me a little while to nail the branding and nail the messaging and the positioning and get a flow of leads in. But if you're watching this video, whether it's on YouTube now live, which none of you are, on Facebook later running as an ad or something, or if you're reading the post, whatever it is, if you run a business or are just trying to put something together and you have something that you're trying to figure out, something that you're trying to solve, let's talk. Let's talk. Because that's kind of like what I do. That's my specialty, solving problems. So there's a page on here, services. If you go to the top of this page and click on services, that'll take you to a page where you can sign up to chat with me. Now, I'm gonna say this a bunch of times, and really, this is the first time that I've actually said it out loud. So this is going to be my dry run of this pitch. But because of the fact that I'm niching down like this, And because of the fact that some of the time you're going to get the answer to your problem on the call with no additional cost whatsoever, I am charging for the call. Now, the idea though is you pay me $50, which is nothing. We're going to get on the phone call. At the end of the call, one of three things is going to happen. One, you're going to think I wasted your time, at which point I'll just give you your money back. So there's like no risk. Two, I'll give you the solution on the call and you'll be excited and you'll go and do it and you're good. Or three, you'll need my help to finish it out. At which point, based on kind of what it is that you're trying to do and how much of my time it's going to take and what realistically we think is going to be required for that, I'll then give you a basic quote. But the key is, if that happens, you're going to give me some money. I'm going to go fix it. And then when I'm done, I'm going to come back to you and say, okay, it's fixed. And that's going to be the extent of our communication. Because like the updates and the checking in and all that kind of stuff, I can't maintain all of that and be able to solve problems the way that I want to. So anyway, sorry, that was just my initial pitch, and this video's gone way too long. But I'm interested. This was recorded from my phone, not from the new camera. It also was recorded from this other angle, so you didn't actually see me setting up the coffee. It's also on the rear camera instead of the front camera, so we'll see what the quality is like. Also, no microphone, so like no lapel mic like I normally do. So this is just getting put right into the phone. So we'll see what that's like. And I really don't like how this keeps losing focus. Maybe I need to be closer. Maybe that's why I need to do one of these. Anywho, we are back. We're going to be getting back to this live every day. I also have some other things that I'm going to be bringing in. The podcast season 3 is going to be a musical podcast. So check that out. I'm going to write and complete my album that I've been working on for the last 5 years over the next 3 months or so. And we'll dive into that, and it'll be a lot of fun. There's also going to be a lot more just regular content being put out. I'll probably do more just writing. I realized that in order for me to do the service the way that I want to, I need to get in front of more people, which means I need to create more content. So it's going to be more of a content-based brand. So that'll be fun. You can also sign up for my newsletter. Check out my website and just sign up for that, and I'll send out weekly kind of updates on the main categories of the different stuff that I'm talking about. I got some fun stuff that's coming down the pipe that's coming soon. But anyway, we'll see you all tomorrow. I don't know how to stop this thing now.